One of the things in this crazy, crazy time where social justice and critical race theory and this insane anti-racist training is taking over our society, and by the way, if you're new here, anti-racist is just code word for racist. It's a very Orwellian term. That's part of what makes it so disturbing. But one of the things that just this is the stuff that keeps me up at night right here. It's not about what's going on in corporations, which is kind of the playground that I play in most often, but it's what's going on in the school systems with this insane ideology being passed on to the next generation when their minds and their brains are still in a highly impressionable place. Listen, if you want your kids to learn a foreign language, to become fluent in a former language, you don't wait until they're like in high school or college to start teaching them that language. You start teaching them when they are as young as absolutely possible, because it is going to be much, much, much easier for them to learn and absorb that information than when they get older. You want to start off young and fresh. My husband, who is completely fluent in English now, he started learning, he grew up in Ukraine, Russian is his first language, but he started learning English when he was like 7 years old and studied it every year consistently in school, and that's how he became fluent in it. Now, replace English with social justice crazy town, and that's what we have in the school system today, because this ideology is being integrated from the time these kids are toddlers. From the time they're in kindergarten, there are actually schools that are developed around the entire premise of raising these kids as little activists. And today we have an egregious example of this going on in schools. One school actually gave kids an assignment that compared police officers to the KKK. Now, we shouldn't be surprised, but I gotta be honest, this stuff never really ceases to amaze me. So we're going to talk about this, and frankly, one organization coming out in favor of this assignment, which is even more mind-boggling to me. But before we get into that, just a quick reminder, folks, if you like the content I'm putting out, if you want to support my channel, the very best thing you can do right now is subscribe. I'm really trying to hit that 100,000 follower milestone by election day. I think I'm going to hit it way earlier, but I need your help. Please consider subscribing, turning on those notifications, giving the video a thumbs up so YouTube knows it's good, sharing it out to people who might be interested in it. I greatly appreciate it. All right, let's take a look at this article. 8th grade assignment comparing police to the KKK, slave owners pulled from Texas schools. Aha, well, that's fantastic. An 8th grade social studies assignment in Dallas came under fire after criticism over how it depicted police and their treatment of Black Americans. The assignment, given to students at Cooper Junior High School in Wiley, Texas, used political cartoons that some critics, including the National Fraternal Order of Police, say compared police officers to the Ku Klux Klan and slave owners. And here we have the example of the cartoon, and yep, there you go. The George Floyd incident played out for 8th graders as though that is the thing that defines all police. And here's the thing that really makes me mad. We all agreed, everyone agreed, when George Floyd died, that this was a horrible thing that should not have happened. Now, some people have changed their tune on that. I personally have not. I think that no matter what George Floyd took, the officer still kneeled on his neck for many, 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 many more minutes than he should have. And frankly, I'm not okay with what happened at all in any way, shape, or form. However, this is depicting an entire group of people for one moment that many would consider an extremely bad example of that group of people. Most people out there agree on this point. This is not the norm for police officers, and don't let anyone tell you that it is. This is not the norm. If we're talking about KKK, slave owners, slave traders, people that were hunting down, that was the norm for them. For all these other depictions, that was the norm. That is who they were. That is what they did. This is an example of one of these things is not like the other. The cartoon shows 5 similar scenes: African-American men on the ground with their hands restrained behind their backs and a white man's knee on their necks, seemingly a reference to the death of George Floyd by Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin. The vice president of the Fraternal Order of Police sent a letter to Wiley Independent School, the superintendent, on August 19th saying, "I cannot begin to tell you how abhorrent and disturbing the comparison is. But what is more disturbing is that no adult within your school thought better before sending this assignment to children. I swear, we are in this time period where it is almost completely about owning and dunking on the other side. When I see something like this is just about dunking on the other side. There is no other purpose to this. I mean, well, of course, except for indoctrinating young children, but this is all about dunking and showing the other side in the worst possible way. If kids are learning this when this is middle school. Frankly, it would be worse if it was elementary school. I gotta give them that. They at least waited until those kids were teenagers. But still, this is depicting the people who are supposed to protect you as their worst possible moment and saying this applies to every police officer when of course it doesn't. And anyone with a brain knows that it doesn't. According to its instructors, the assignment aimed to serve as a discussion on First Amendment rights and racial equality protests across the nation during 2020. But Gramelli says the assignment aimed to indoctrinate students. Ding, ding, ding. Texas Governor Greg Abbott took to Twitter to express his displeasure with Wiley and the assignment, tweeting, "The teacher should be fired," and asking the Texas Education Agency to investigate and take action. It's the opposite of what must be taught. Good for you, Greg Abbott. The school district issued a statement after pulling the assignment, saying, "We are sorry for any hurt that may have been caused through this lesson. The assignment has been removed and students will not be expected to complete it." The district did not identify the teacher due to privacy laws, also said that the cartoons are not part of the district's curriculum, resources, or hang on. This is a teacher in a public school system that's being paid by taxpayer dollars, and we don't get to know who she is? Okay. All right. Because, of course, that's more important than indoctrinating students. The Texas Education Agency confirmed to CNN that it is investigating the assignment, saying it does not condone the use of divisive images. And this is a photo. This is a photo of the assignment that circulated on Facebook, courtesy of CNN. It says, at the core of the First Amendment is our right to assemble and protest. However, not all Americans view the rights the same way. Some argue that peaceful protests are the only way to create social change, while others do not believe protesting is an effective means of change at all. In the midst of the protests following George Floyd's death, some have characterized protesters for creating chaos. Just a characterization, school teacher, please. Others say the violence is instigated by outside extremist groups, and many see the police initiating violence in the protests. Okay, so this teacher has not given their students any fact-based information at all, and it's clearly either going based on what the news has told them or just putting their own bias into it. Your bias should not be present when you are teaching children. I don't know why I have to say this, but clearly. The National Coalition Against Censorship issued a letter protesting the school's decision to remove the assignment. The coalition says the decision could create dangerous precedent that educators can't present material that may be offensive to someone. No. Actually, let's look at this letter. Let's look at this letter that the National Coalition Against Censorship, which I'm sure is another Orwellian term, sent out to the school districts. Let's just go down to the proper letter. I am writing on behalf of the National Coalition Against Censorship and the other organizations signed below to protest the decision to remove from a school website an editorial cartoon that was part of a class assignment because it criticizes the use of violence against Black people over the course of American history, including violence by police. The NCAC is an alliance of 57 blah, 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 blah. Based on news reports, it is our understanding that a social studies teacher at Cooper Junior High School posted 2 editorial cartoons as part of an assignment. The cartoon about racial violence and other depicting opposition to wearing a mask as protection against COVID-19. The assignment was canceled after the National Fraternal Order of Police complained that the cartoon about racial violence is abhorrent and disturbing. Texas Governor Greg Abbott has demanded the teacher be fired and asked the Texas Education Agency to investigate. Okay. Yet the teacher appears to have been following a curriculum established by the State Board of Education. Oh my effing God, these people are masters at twisting anything to their worldview. It requires middle school students to discuss how and whether the actions of U.S. citizens and the local, state, and federal government have achieved the ideals espoused in the founding documents. It further requires them to organize and interpret from visuals to identify bias and points of views created by the historical context surrounding the event and to evaluate the validity of a source based on corroboration and other sources and information about the author. The assignment that we just read, based on this screenshot right here, did none of those things. It did none of those things. It advanced an agenda. The teacher at Cooper Junior High School asked students to write about the role that protest plays in democracy and about whether protest leads to change in our society. In other words, it asked the student to do exactly what the standards require them to do. Discuss how and whether the actions of U.S. citizens have achieved the ideals espoused in the founding documents. No, you can ask students to write about protest and to think about the role that protest plays in society without showing them a cartoon that depicts police officers like the KKK. This cartoon was completely unnecessary. If your goal is to have students analyze the effectiveness of protests, this cartoon is completely unnecessary. It doesn't need to be there. This plays no role in that. They are perfectly capable of looking up articles on protests throughout history and deciding for themselves. This is a blatantly biased perspective. However, the actions taken by school officials were anything but neutral. By canceling the assignment, they expressed official disapproval of ideas expressed by the cartoon depicting racial violence. As a result, they violated their duty as public officials. You know, when they're writing the stuff like this, they do it in whiny voice, so I can't help it, guys. I have to bring whiny voice to the equation because you know it's exactly how it would come out if they were talking to you in person. As a result, they violated their duty as public officials. More than 75 years ago, the Supreme Court stated that no official, high or petty, can prescribe what shall be orthodox in politics, nationalism, religion, or matters of opinion. You would do well to follow your own GD advice. I don't want to read the rest of this. So this place is against the banning of it. NCAC calls upon the board to rescind its ban on the cartoon and allow the assignment to be completed. Again, if this is just about analyzing protest, you don't need that cartoon to do it. They can do it in other ways. Listen, back in the day... God, I'm about to sound like my father. Like, back when I was in school and I had to walk uphill in the snow both ways without shoes to school every single day. Back when I was in school, you know what I did research in? A goddamn encyclopedia. You know what the encyclopedia showed? Different types of protests. Oh my God. And today, people have the internet. They can find whatever news they want from whatever time period they want. You don't need this or cartoon to analyze the effectiveness of peaceful protest. Like, do I ask too much of these people? I don't know. Sometimes I really question it. All right, guys, you get the point. That's all I got for this one. I'll see you soon.